Good day, everybody. I'm Shmee, and I make guides for Path of Exile. And while I do normally focus on Ruthless League, this video is going to apply equally to both PoE Normal and PoE Ruthless. Today, I'm back to talk about Boat League. You see, we had a video reveal yesterday that he had the patch notes dropped afterward, and good lord, there are a ton of changes. In fact, there's way too much to go over every single individual change, so instead, I think I'm just going to boil it down to the 5 big things that you need to know about Boat League, also known as Settlers of Kalguur by people who hate fun. So first, a QRD on the league mechanic. Every player is going to get access to their own version of a town called Kingsmarch. This town has crafting areas for various professions like smithing and mining and enchanting and whatnot, all of which can be worked by NPCs that you recruit to work in your town. You can even set these NPCs to run maps for you, and you can get these tasks completed in real time. Anyone who's familiar with sim games like Stardew Valley, The Sims, or Darkest Dungeon should feel right at home with Boat League's mechanics. Now, each profession in your town effectively boils down to a very slightly varied loot printer, and generally this raises a concern because we've had several leagues recently, Affliction and Necropolis in particular, where currency printing was so off the rails in Standard League that the economy tanked pretty quickly. And in Ruthless, we had the exact opposite problem, trying to push for some big cache of loot, only to get 2 alterations and a chromatic. So, seeing whether GGG can actually tread the line where the loot printing is rewarding but not out of control is my biggest concern about Boat League. There's also a shipment system where you send your NPCs out on boats to do shipments, and the shipments are risky because there's a risk thing, and I don't know, like the mechanics felt awkward enough that I just need the hands-on feel before it really makes sense to me. From what I can see, it's basically the very original War of the Atlas, except for chasing down the Elder and the Shaper. Now in Boat League, the bosses are chasing you down, which sounds pretty cool, but completely depends on the exact mechanics, so we shall see. In order to hire those workers for your town, GGG is also adding gold to the Path of Exile as a universal drop. They're also adding a thing they called asynchronous trading. I will unwind that jargon in a second. Gold is not only going to be used for the league mechanic, but also for things like respecting your character. There's even an option to gamble with gold, so it's basically being added as a kind of universal quality of life coin, which honestly seems pretty cool. Now, asynchronous trading is a very fancy way of saying that if you're playing in Trade League, now you'll be able to do currency exchange through the in-game NPC Faustus. You will no longer have to Alt-Tab over to the PoE Trade website. And when they say asynchronous, it means that you're not having to party with anyone. So Faustus is basically like an in-game auctioneer for the PoE Trade website. However, it's only good for currency, but that does include fragments and league currency. After Boat League drops, melee players do not ever get to complain ever again, ever. Holy lord, the melee buffs here are insane. Now, the old mandatory ancestor totems have been deleted, which I think that's actually a really good change. But the reason I'm saying that they're super buffed is that the damage multipliers for melee skills has been increased by, just a little bit. It is important to note here that the increases tend to affect scaling at higher gem levels. So melee did receive a massive buff, but you may not feel it early on since the buff is mostly to that increased scaling. So by around gem level 20, then yeah, we're talking about twice as much damage as before. And on top of that, weapon quality is a multiplicative damage increase instead of additive. Oh yeah, and you can get about twice as much life from a single modifier, so survivability is a lot easier now. And it's a lot easier to get maximum resistances on the tree now. I don't know how long it's been, years at least, since melee got this much love. Now, kind of ironic. I'm not actually sure if it's enough love to really dethrone Lightning Arrow as a league starter. The movement speed just can't really be beat, but we will likely see an overwhelmingly melee meta in Boat League. Now, there's a huge change that's happening with the deal with the Bandits quest rewards, and I don't see other people acknowledging just how big this is going to be. Previously, if you sided with Aramir in Act 2, you received 2 passive points. Siding with one of the bandits gave you an assortment of stats that was generally inferior, so the default was just to side with Aramir unless you were playing some kind of special build. Now, you do still get 2 passive points, or up to 2, I should say, but one of the points has been moved over to the Fell Shrine Ruins quest, it's also in Act 2. Now, instead of choosing between some mix of stats versus 2 passive point, now you're just choosing between a single passive point versus 40 maximum life from Oak, 8% movement speed from Creighton, or 15% elemental resists from Alira. Purely on stat budget alone, the bandit rewards are now the better choice, especially Alira. This is basically a clone of, I can't remember if it's Diamond Skin or Prismatic Skin, but one of the better notables in the tree. I think that the new laziness meta, especially in Ruthless, where resistances are a lot harder to come by, is just basically go Alira, unless you have a specific need, instead of going Aramir like you used to. Last up is some Ascendancy changes they made. They redid the Gladiator Ascendancy. They technically deleted the Raider Ascendancy, but really it just got a Wildwood rebrand, and they're calling it the Warden now. And the Deadeye got buffed, because I guess that just needed to happen. In fairness, it was part of the Raider Ascendancy, and there was nowhere else to put it. The Frenzy Charge thing right here. That's Deadeye. That's the only change. Now, the Gladiator is the biggest change and the easiest to talk about, because it's basically the same concept. It's just much stronger. Bleed also got a lot of love in the passive tree, so I think there is a lot of opportunity for a Lacerate Bleed Gladiator starter coming up in Boat League. Weapons Master is also really interesting because it enables a lot of weapon-specific builds by just giving them boosts to their stats. Even the Ruthless versions, though they are nerfed, they're pretty good. The new Gladiator doesn't really feel flashy, it just feels solid. And I'm really not sure what to make of the new Warden. Part of me says that she's a lot more mechanically abusable, but it's hard to say that before you play it. Tinctures are back and they're core now, and if you love Tinctures, it's a good news, bad news situation. The good news is that they're back. The bad news is that their effects are all less abusable, they have a built-in cooldown which doesn't start ticking until the effect wears off, and there's a really annoying mana burn mechanic. Also note here that it does not say that the mana burn is 1% of your maximum unreserved mana. I'm pretty sure that if you're playing a typical melee build that only has a tiny little sliver of mana and a whole bunch of auras, your Tinctures are going to constantly be falling off because of that mana burn. There's a kind of ingrained mana reserved penalty that you have to have some extra mana if you're going to use these new Tinctures. It's a big burden that honestly I just don't think very many players are going to go for. Now the good news is there are a whole lot of bright spots in this Warden Ascendancy, a lot of elemental things, but they're really buildcraft specific, so they're mechanical stuff. I don't know. Build crafters are going to have fun with that. I guess that's the best point that I can make with the new Warden. It's not really just a solid overall Ascendancy, but it's something that you would want to tinker with and exploit mechanically. Honestly, I'm crazy excited because of the ridiculous amount of changes, and I hope you guys are as excited for Boat League as me. So hopefully you all got your nautical boat-themed pun names ready, because Boat League drops next Friday, July 26th. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, take care, Exiles.